The intel community has put out an unclassified version of this report. We're going to get to that. The classified version was briefed to President-elect Donald Trump. Here are some of the highlights from this report that was put out. We assess Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assess Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. Moscow's influence campaign followed a Russian messaging strategy that blends covert intelligence operations such as cyber activity with overt efforts by Russian government agencies, state-funded media, third-party intermediaries, and paid social media users or trolls. We assess with high confidence that Russian military intelligence used the Guccifer 2.0 persona and DCLeaks.com to release U.S. victim data obtained in cyber operations publicly in exclusives to media outlets and relayed material to WikiLeaks. DHS assesses that the types of systems Russian actors targeted or compromised were not involved in vote tallying. We assess Moscow will apply lessons learned from its Putin-ordered campaign aimed at the U.S. presidential election to future influence efforts worldwide, including against U.S. allies and their election processes. Wanted to take the time to read the highlights from the report. Let's bring in our panel. Charles Hurt, political columnist for The Washington Times. We welcome Isaac Dover, chief Washington correspondent for Politico, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Isaac, your thoughts on this and how it's been received?
Well, we have a statement from the President-elect that seems to take the presentation seriously, more seriously than he had been taking it from the tweets that he had been putting out, statements to this point. But what we don't have is any clear acceptance from him of the assessment from the intelligence community. He has, it seems like at least his team is continuing to question it. And we have a statement from him and then from the Vice President-elect saying that they will be taking new action once they're in office, but it doesn't change what these 17 agencies put together with what they're saying is very high certainty here of Russia's intent and Russia's role in the influence of the election.
Charles.
I think Trump understands that this is the fight he's in is a losing proposition. You know, he's in what should be the honeymoon period of his presidency. I mean, it's supposed to start when he's sworn in. He's supposed to be anticipated, and most presidents start with the wind at their back. He has now been so involved in so many issues with so many tweets that it's as if the marriage has already started, and this is not something he can win because there's so many Republicans who are concerned about the intelligence and who don't want to denigrate it or to diminish it. So I think his statement today was a good one. We had a good meeting. He didn't say I accept or I don't accept, but he basically said I take it seriously enough that I'll order an investigation for 90 days, a general one of the cyber attacks. We're going to be tough on this. That's fine. He needs for this debate to stop. It could continue about the details of what the Russians are doing here in France and Germany and elsewhere, but it should not be a Trump versus the world. This is not. It sort of reminds you of when he got into the fight with the Gold Star parents. It's one you can only lose. It's a personal one, and I think he understands he's got to let it go, which I think he's doing, and that's very smart to do.
He also praised in that statement, as Isaac mentioned, the intelligence community, the men and women who protect the nation. House Speaker Paul Ryan issued a statement. Russia has a track record of working against our interests, and they clearly tried to meddle in our political system. I strongly condemn any outside interference in our elections, which we must work to prevent moving forward. We must also be clear that there is no evidence that there was any interference in the voting or balloting process. We cannot allow partisans to exploit this report in an attempt to delegitimize the president-elect's victory. Donald Trump won this election fair and square because he heard the voices of Americans who felt forgotten. That's House Speaker Paul Ryan. Charlie.
It's a strong statement and probably one that needs to be made because clearly a lot of people, partisans, are trying to sort of conflate the two. Another thing I thought was very interesting, in addition to what Charles said about Donald Trump's statement, was that that he and Mike Pence intend to go aggressively after this the cyber espionage, which I think is a smart thing to do because it means that he's taking it seriously. But in addition to that, it also sort of reminds everybody what a bad job apparently the current president president has done over the past 8 years in combating cyber espionage by not only the Russians but the Chinese, Iranians, and who knows what other enemies that have infiltrated American cybersecurity.
Isaac, how far do Democrats push this? How much does this issue dominate ahead of the inauguration?
Well, we have 2 weeks left until the inauguration. It seems like there will be some more discussion of it, but I think what's important here is that it's not just Democrats that are raising this. You have John McCain and Lindsey Graham continuing to push this. We don't know how far we're going to go in the discussion of whether there should be a special committee set up to investigate these hackings and not just what happened in the election, but the report, as Charlie was mentioning, goes into 2008 and 2012 and activities that have happened all throughout. The public part of it is not getting so much into that, but there is more information about this that our intelligence agencies seem to have. And we'll see whether there is a bipartisan effort. I think that'll change it. If it's just Democrats who are questioning this, then it does become Democrats versus Donald Trump.
But it's a short jump for some Democrats to make that this is not a legitimate election because the voters were somehow influenced by all this information. And are they going to make that jump? We haven't heard anybody say that explicitly.
So far, many of them who have been talking publicly have been very careful not to make that jump. We'll see how that goes as this sets in. Since election night, whenever that was, at about 10:30 p.m. on election night, when it became clear to Democrats that Donald Trump was actually going to be the president, you see this slow process of ingesting it and internalizing it, or then coming off of the acceptance, rejecting it, right? And so I think that you'll see, as we get closer to Inauguration Day, more Democrats who start to get a little more publicly uncomfortable with what's going on, and going forward from there, they may try to carry this forward in that way. But it's tough because they don't want to politicize this. They don't want to make it a partisan thing. They want to try to make this about the real issue of the Russian war.
They tried today to change the electoral votes to challenge them for various reasons, and it didn't happen, and Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States.
All of these attempts look pathetic. The attempt today to change the electoral college vote, the recounts that were ordered by Jill Stein, joined by Clinton in those states. This is all a joke. I think Republicans, particularly Trump, have made a mistake in overestimating how widespread is the notion that this was a rigged election and that Putin put a thumb on the scale. That you hear from left-wing partisans. It is not a generally accepted idea. The Intel report explicitly says we have nothing to say on this. It's a partisan left-wing meme, and it isn't going anywhere. Ignore it is the best strategy that Republicans ought to take.
Can Donald Trump stay off Twitter on this issue and ignore it and move on?
No, I don't think. No, I don't think he sees any reason to. I think that he sees it as a very valuable tool. And look at what happens every single day. He sets the agenda of what people talk about. Now he may pick the wrong thing, but he does set the agenda.
Like the ratings for The Apprentice under Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I thought that was pretty good.